everyone, welcome back to the layout. The Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for a special Grade Crossing Pro /2 review. This is by Logic Rail Technologies, and I was able to pick up one with a few accessories in order to get my crossing gates working over my recently installed road crossing here just west of Evanston. Make sure you like, subscribe, and do the notification thing. Much appreciated. I've been working on this crossing here for a long time. Again, it's just east of Evanston, and been working on putting in the actual road and crossing. Found some crossing signals and gates that are actually 25 years old, which caused some problems, as you'll see, but they were overcome. And then I picked up some control board, a control board, and a couple of accessories to get everything working. First of all, I did get a speaker that came with it. That was only like $6, very cheap speaker, 8 ohms. And then I also got this crossing bell module. This makes sure that the bell sound is a more natural bell sound and is not started and cut off abruptly, which sounds unrealistic. So I made sure I got that so it would sound as best as possible than the actual control board. That was $60, and it came with the needed resistors for powering the emitters. Instructions, as you can see, we'll go through those a little bit here shortly on how to put everything together. The instructions are very, very thorough and includes everything, all the information you need to get it all installed. And then, of course, the board itself, and it has some very easy to use connectors there, and all the pots for adjusting things. A little socket there for the sound module, which we'll put in here shortly, and then some configuration switches. And definitely looks like a well thought out layout, and has capabilities for not only infrared, which I am using, but also for photo cells and also detected track sections. So there's 3 different ways. You can also configure it for either stall motors or servos. And Logic Rail Technology does have a servo set up for controlling the crossing gates. But I had these old Tomar ones that had the motors already as part of it. Here's the infrared emitters and detectors. So you get 4 of each. Each detector needs an emitter for it to work properly, and then the wires, not nearly enough wires, but definitely need a lot of wires and a lot of wiring for this. But anyway, first thing I did as I took it out of the box, went ahead and inserted the sound module as carefully as possible. It was probably the easiest part of the installation, but that went in with no trouble at all, and it was ready to go. The main thing is to make sure that the label is the same on both as you're reading it, and you'll be in good shape. And then I installed it back behind the backdrop. This is in the staging yard area, and the crossing is right over this backdrop here on the other side of this backdrop, right about this location. I didn't want to install the board right there because it'd be too far to reach from where I'm standing here to the board. So I moved it over to the left here a little bit. You can see I already have the wires there from the the crossing gates and the crossing signals, the crossing lights. So those are all there ready to go. And I installed it with just a couple of screws. Used some very small screws so I didn't go through the backdrop. First thing to concern yourself was the configuration switches, which you see a pretty easy chart here. So I was using infrared sensors. So that was the main thing. I did have gates, and you can do all kinds of other things. Needed to figure out what kind of resistors to use. Now, here's the recommendations from the instructions, but I had 25-year-old Tomar signal lights, and so they didn't actually match up to this here, and so I wasn't really sure what to do. I ended up using a 1,000 ohm resistors, which worked out pretty well. I kind of went higher than what I thought it should be because I didn't want to wear them out. Here's the old Tomar. These were fresh out of the box, so they're brand new as far as that goes. Never been used, never been installed. But this is some pretty old technology. It has 3-volt stall motors, which turns this cam, and it actually works quite well, going in both directions. The only thing is that the way this cam system is that it turns for quite a while before the gates actually move. So when it goes down, there's about a second and a half, maybe even 2 seconds, where the motor is turning, but there's not actually any movement of the crossing gates coming down. So it's up, and then it still has a ways to go. So there's a little bit of delay there. You can see there a little bit of a delay between when the motor turns on and when the crossing gates actually come down. And you'll see in a little bit how that did not realize that as I was inspecting these, but it did kind of make a difference on the placement of the emitters and detectors. So this installation took a lot longer than I thought it would, but it was mainly because I was using such old technology, did not really correspond to what we have today. So, but I did get it installed. It did work. First thing, of course, was getting the lights hooked up, and as you can see, I here successfully got the lights wired up with 1,000 ohm resistors. Was plenty of voltage still to light the LEDs and the sufficient brightness. Wouldn't really want them to be any brighter. I tried to use even more ohm, but the way LEDs are, I don't think these are one where you can dim them. They're just a certain brightness. All right, here's the recommendations from, or what the sensors that you need. You have what they call WF, which I think stands for west far away, and then the WN for the west near, EN, the east near, and EF, far. So you need 4 sets of sensors to make the crossing gates work properly. So here's the initial installation of the east far, and then the east near. You have a emitter closest to us and the detector far away. Here's the west near, and then the west far. Now I had, when I first put these in, I could not get them to work. And the big issue I was having, it took me a while to figure this out, a couple days actually. But what happened was they came with this covering here to focus them, and it was cutting off too much light. So I had to cut that off. Now the guy at Logic Rail Tech, he put this on for the first time for me. I was a special case, and it turned out that it was just too far, or too much covering. So I cut it off, and then it worked perfectly, exactly as it was supposed to. And the support at Logic Earl was very good. He gave me some great suggestions on what to do. It really helped me along to get it to be to where it would work properly. And I know that if you order some from him now, he's going to make the adjustment so that it's so you don't have to worry about cutting it off. But it did take some time for me to figure it out. And using the instructions, here's the placement I came up with for the emitters and detectors. So there's some calculations that you have to do, the speed of the trains that you're going to be having, and then how far things are to be, so that as the train gets to the crossing, that there's plenty of time for the crossing gates to come down. And so this is what we ended up with using the calculations from the instructions. And as you can see, there's not any time at all between when the gates come down, the train is right there. I don't think this would meet safety standards. And again, the problem was not logic rail technologies. The problem was I'm using 25-year-old crossing gates, and that delay, that 1.5 to 2 second delay that you have where the motor is turning but the gates are not coming down, really messed up with my calculations on the placement of the emitters and detectors. So I had to make some adjustments. Here you can see it coming from the other side. Wasn't too bad here, but it's still, again, it's like right on top of things. A little bit better. I was going a little bit slower, I think, with this one. And I had another problem that I noticed with the emitters and detectors. And that is if you had, it worked fine for most cars, but if you had some tank cars or certain hoppers, the emitters, the infrared being emitted actually ends up going under the tank cars. And so you have intermittent detection. So every time it goes under the tank there, that same thing happened with certain covered hoppers or different kinds of hoppers. It would actually go underneath the car, and so it would be detected, not detected, detected, not detected, and would completely confuse the logic in the control board. And so it should, at this point, start to go up. But as you can see, the train is getting further and further away, and still it is not going up. Now it does have a built-in 35-second timeout. So if there's nothing going on and it doesn't really know what it's doing because of the unusual detection, then it will go up after 35 seconds. Now I did cut out some of the video here. That was not a complete 35 seconds, but you do have that as a fail-safe. I also had a problem. I did put one of the emitters on this side of the third track, so if I had the switcher coming, this is really dangerous. Now I'm stopping it just as the gates are coming down here so I could do some measurements. But I did put that particular emitter on this side of the rail so that if I ever had the yard switcher coming out, it would be detected and the gates would come down. So I'm going ahead and measuring how far it is from where they came down to where I would have wanted them to come down. And then measured from that point exactly how far back I needed to move the emitter and detector. So what I determined is that this set is going to have to go back behind the bridge. This one I'm going to be able to keep, or would be able to keep where it is. This one here was going to need to be moved away from the crossing to about here in order for it to work properly. And it was going to go from here across to there, so it wouldn't cut out, it wouldn't make it too far away for the main line. But and then this one here was going to need to move it all the way back to this point here, beyond the signals, on the other side of the signal bridge there. So even though I had them all installed properly, I had to end up moving them all. Then I also tried to figure out, okay, what is it going to take to get it to also detect tank trains? And so I put a car there and kind of figured out how far I needed to have them up. Right, so it worked not only for the tank cars, but it also would continue to detect for the covered hoppers. So they had to be out of the ground pretty far. I wanted to make sure too that it wasn't too far that the flat cars would have problems being too much on the other directions. I also wanted to make sure that the emitters and detectors were camouflaged, so I used numerous different types of camouflage. I used some foliage there, just some bushes. Here I put a small tree on this side, so this is an emitter covered by a tree, and then on the other side you have just some foliage around. Now you can still see it, but you don't really notice it with the foliage there. But it still then works. And I wasn't really sure if this was going to work, but it does. Just this one section being detected does cause the gates to go up, and then as you go back the other way, they come up automatically. So it does work with just the one. Also use some electrical boxes. These are electrical boxes from the modern detail set from Walthers. I did cut them so that it would cover it up a little bit better. Use foliage on the other side here. I use the tree and foliage on the other side. And then here I'm going to use another electrical box. I have to paint this one yet. And then foliage. And then the last set is going actually on the other side of the bridge. And you can kind of see them a little bit there. All right, so with them moved to the proper location, then we have a little bit better timing here, a lot safer. This is going about 20, 25 miles per hour, which is what the speed is through this area. The passenger train, if we have an excursion train going through here, it might be a little bit faster. It definitely works out a lot better, a lot more realistic, much safer for all of the little people driving across this road, that they know when to stop for the trains. So overall, it's a very good experience. I highly recommend the Logic Rail Technologies Grade Crossing Pro /2. It was very easy to install, notwithstanding the difficulties I had because I had 25-year-old crossing signals and crossing gates. They work very, very well, very smooth. I had some problems with the gates going up all the way. You want them to go up completely straight up. As you can see here, they're all the way up. I had a little bit of problem where they wouldn't quite go all the way up, and I solved that by taking some motor oil and dipping my finger in the motor oil and then carefully putting some of the motor oil on the cam of the control cam that's connected to the motor, and just kind of put some motor oil on there, and then it was able to operate much more smoothly, and each time it does go up completely vertical, so definitely helped out a lot. After I did that, I kind of thought to myself, well, I hope this plastic that is used on these 25-year-old crossing signals isn't made of a plastic that is attacked by motor oil. I think most plastics are going to be safe, but there are some, I looked it up, and there are some plastics that are attacked by motor oil. Hopefully, I won't have a problem. I don't think I will. I think it's going to be fine. But definitely works exactly in the way that I was wanting it to. And again, the crossing control board was easy to install. Great support from the Logic Rail technologies, and the instructions were very clear. I had some difficulties with it because I was using these old signals. Next time, I have 2 more crossings to do, and I definitely do plan on using Logic Rail Technologies control boards for those also. And I'm going to try out their servo. And I think they have newer ones by Tomar. Tomar, I think, comes with the control motor, and I think they're a little bit more expensive. And then there's some crossing gates by Details Plus that look pretty good, and you can power them with a servo that Logic Rail Technologies has, and that's much less expensive. I think their control servo was only like $15-20, something like that, and the signal itself, a pair of signals by Details Plus, was in the 60s, not more than $70. So not too bad. I'm going to try those out, see how they work. The main thing will be if the gates go up and down as smoothly as possible. Do not want to have the gates jerking at all. So I'm going to be checking those out and see how they work. But again, great experience, and I definitely love having crossing gates, operating crossing gates, something I've always wanted in my many years of modeling trains, and finally have my first one. I'm going to have 2 more. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend and a great week coming up. Take care, everybody.